Well, welcome to Nova Legends podcast, Coach Keph.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming, Coach Keph played soccer at George Mason University. Coach travel soccer in the Northern Virginia area. The Vikings used to call Keph's personality a disruptor. He comes in and tries to disrupt the what's going on with the travel clubs and stuff. Had a really good time. Then went started his own club called JOGA, and JOGA was training, but it was also a club as well. And then he took that club and that concept to Holland. His wife is Dutch, and he's been living in North Holland for the last, is that 4 or 5 years, Coach?
Yeah, it's going on 5 years now. Yep.
Fair. So again, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you, Julian. Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and looking forward to catching up with you.
Yeah, that'd be great. So first of all, the news is that Ten Hag may take the Manchester United job. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's an absolutely great hire by Man United in terms of getting someone with a clear philosophy and direction on how he wants to play. Me being an Arsenal fan, I don't like it, but for all the Man United fans, I think they're in for a treat. I think the only thing that could hinder him is making sure the board and everything's in line, because he comes, and I'm pretty sure we'll get into it, but when you talk about Dutch football and you talk about academies and the philosophy, a lot of the kind of modern football ideas of how to build an academy into a club, into the first team, comes from Holland. And obviously he comes from that background. And obviously being at Ajax, which is probably the champion of that idea. Man United, obviously believes a lot in their academy. I think they're making a great hire, somebody who could really develop the club and get the stability back. So I think it's a great hire for them.
Yeah. Well, who do you think will get the Ajax job? I'm an Ajax fan, so that's my main focus on this transaction.
Oh, it's gonna be interesting because actually the guy Arne Slot, who was Feyenoord's coach now, he was actually rumored to be the new Ajax coach before he took the Feyenoord job. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen. I could see them go internal. I've heard Heitinga be mentioned. They may do that, just to because it's hard to kind of they've kind of built some real stability now. Like even when they had Peter Bosz and then into Ten Hag, like Peter Bosz plays a similar style of football than Ten Hag does. Ten Hag was able to add to that and share his vision to it, of course. And then so I think you want to kind of keep a similar philosophy and mindset and not rock the boat too much. But again, they have some young assets that are going to be looking around thinking, okay, if Ten Hag is gone, what should I do, right? Should I be staying there? So I think it's going to be I can't give you a definitive answer right now, but part of me thinks it's going to be someone in-house. So Heitinga is the name that may come in and take over. He might have a strong number 2, but I could see that happening.
This is a real test to Ajax's philosophy and organization, because to lose Overmars and Ten Hag in the same couple of months is a big deal. Yeah, it's going to be tough. So are you willing to admit at this point that I was right and you should have been more patient with Arsene Wenger at Arsenal, or do you think you're right for always fussing about everything that he did?
I'll go 50-50 on it. I'll go I didn't like he was hounded out, but it was time for a change. But I think the change needed to, I think what you see, and now you're kind of seeing with Barca kind of coming back, and now when you have like a style and then you have a philosophy, and the board and everybody can align with that, it just allows it to move forward. And I don't think Arsenal had that. I think there was a little bit of a power struggle where even when Arsenal left, we didn't necessarily, we said, okay, we play attacking football, but it wasn't like, the principles of play were left. It seemed like we just picked a coach, you had a name and a manager, and then he wanted to do something else. And then, you get all different directions. And I think that, that's probably for everything, that's for all companies and everything. But I will say that Wenger, I wish Wenger was still heavily involved, even as a sporting director or as an advisor. It's kind of sad that he isn't. because I think his style of play and his everything that he is, the class, the band, everything that he was, I think he represented. He is what Arsenal is and represents. So I go 50-50 on you, but I do think it was time for a change. It was just how they went about the change maybe wasn't the best.
Yeah, I just started following soccer when Chandler started playing. So then I had a clean slate. And then there's something about Arsene Wenger and Arsenal that I loved. And then when he left, I left. I'm an Ajax fan now. So that's someone else. That's someone else's problem. So I wanted to start out kind of just trying to figure out 4 or 5 years in being in Holland and being immersed in Dutch and European football. When you look back on what you knew when you left here, and you were doing some trips to Holland, and you were still following European football closely, of course. You look back, have you learned tons? And you look back and you say, I didn't know anything then, or do you look back and say, I was on the right track then, I know more now, or do you say, you know what, I was always right there? What is your feeling about what you know now compared to what you knew when you went to Holland?
You know what? I think that's an excellent question, Julian. You know what? I'm more along the lines of I'm rethinking everything from development. And let me say this. I think we did a lot of things well. I think we learned a lot. I still think, you're always going to learn. And what I mean is, and we had talked earlier about kids, right? My kid is playing and you get to see kind of like the football level over here and kind of what's taught. And, generally what I'm just experiencing is through my son, I'm looking at it saying, what is his football experience? Right. And in the experience, there comes education, there comes your club, there comes the people that you interact with, your coaches, there come the parents, the families. I think one thing I look at more now is more looking at what's the football experience for everyone involved. Maybe I was more tunnel vision and like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what JOGA has to do. And now I'm looking at it more from a holistic way. For everybody involved, how does that look like? What are you asking parents to do? What are you asking players to do? What's the culture? All of those things. I'll say this as well. One thing I've learned is that, yes, we learned a lot from Europe, and I used to put a very heavy emphasis on, what they're doing in Europe, which is great. Of course, they have a history of the game. They have incredible knowledge, and they share that knowledge. But one of the things I would say is that a lot of times we get caught in what they're doing, and sometimes we're not looking at who we are, right? What's our culture? How do we coach? How do we express ourselves? How do we want to run a session? Because I've been to many countries, Holland, obviously, many times, Portugal, Denmark, Spain, all these different places, seeing their football culture and the coaching. And each of them have different ways they kind of operate, right? They do things differently, but they operate within their own culture. And I would say, take tips, of course, be open to everything, which I am, but at the same time, believe in what you're teaching in the development path that you're trying to create and be obsessed with it, right? Doesn't mean that every time you're along the journey that you did it right or what people quote unquote say right. So one of the things that I probably did maybe more when I was young is that we don't know where people are on their journey. Right. Mm-hmm. So we might be looking at coach, they don't know what they're doing. They're playing the style football, but we just don't know where people are on their journey. Now, if they're telling you, well, this is how to play, and you're kind of looking at it, and then you're looking at the product, maybe you're like, okay, maybe this isn't good enough, or there could be some improvements. But I would say that in my journey and in anyone's journey, we don't know where their journey's headed. And if someone's very committed and passionate and wants to do a deep dive in who they are as a coach or as a player, I'm a little bit more patient. Not patient, but let me say, I'm not trying to be as judgmental. I would say when I was younger, I was a little bit more judgmental and more like, how was this? But I'm thinking more along the lines of, how do you, like I said, and people have to be passionate about it. I'm not talking about those who are just in it for money or, the complaints we have about U.S. soccer, but really just who's really trying to make a difference. And if you're trying to make a difference, there's a journey that you're going to go on that will never stop, but you will definitely grow from. And so for myself, I would say I've definitely grown a lot. I think there's a lot of things that I actually tell people that this year here and even Americans that I meet that come over here, I said, no, there's a lot of things I would do differently. You know?
So if I ask my son, what's the most important thing he learned from JOGA? He'll say what to do when I don't have the ball. So like on offense, on defense, that's the most important lesson that he learned from JOGA. He says it, and you can tell that's where he's really advanced. Is that something that you're aware of, that your players do a really good job of that?
I hope they do, because I think I was ringing it in their heads every day. But no, that's a great comment. That's a great comment from Chandler, of course, because I think because they always, the famous quotes by Johan Cruyff. You get about, if you're a decent player, you get about a minute and a half on the ball. If you're a great player, 2 minutes. What are you doing for the other 88, right? So that's really makes a difference. So I think that, and that's something that you see over here that the kids have a better understanding of, or a quicker understanding of, anticipating and reading the flow of the game. And so that's something that we definitely tried to impart on the kids that train with us.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get back to Holland in a bit. Let's go back to Georgia.
Yeah.
So you were raised in suburban Atlanta. Is that where you came from?
Yeah. So Marietta is where I lived most of my youth. I was an Army brat, so I was everywhere. But Marietta ended up being kind of home from early middle school years into high school. So I kind of claimed that as home. So yeah, Marietta was my home, and I played youth soccer there, played high school soccer. It was a great experience.
Were you one of the only minorities in the area? That must have been probably a class 98, 97 high school, probably. So
yeah, 98 high school. Yeah. What was interesting? So I went to Wheeler High School. So Wheeler at that time was actually, I think, close to 25, either between 25 and 35% Black, actually, minority. So, and then we also had a big contingent of a lot of Brazilian families actually moved in throughout those 4 years. So we actually ended up getting a lot of Brazilians, and then also Latin Americans. And so our school was, it was still predominantly white, but I think it was about let me say 55 to 60%. So in that area, Cobb County, where we were considered one of the more diverse schools, because we were pretty diverse at that moment.
Yeah, and so were there if obviously this is an easy question, but if you're coming up today, you would have been a much different player than you were growing up in Cobb County. I mean, who were your role models? Who did you try to play like back then?
Oh, that's a great question. Back in the day, it was so hard to see games. All the access again. You didn't have YouTube, didn't have all those things. So obviously the Ronaldinho video, the Nike video they came out with. I remember basketball did a version of it too, but like they had it where Ronaldinho was holding the ball in his head, dancing, and doing the flicks and everything. I obviously looked up to him. I looked up to Thierry Henry, being an Arsenal fan, of course. Those were kind of my role models. So yeah, I mean, guys who could take the ball and make you kind of dream and be expressive with it. Those were the players that really, really got my attention.
And was club soccer the most important soccer in Georgia, or was high school and club both important?
They were actually both important.
Mm-hmm.
Club was you did it longer, so it was probably number one, but high school was kind of right behind it. Also because we used to play with the best players. One of the things, it's so funny you're bringing up these questions, because I just had these type of conversations with people just this past week. So it's like almost like you're involved in them, Julian. But so at high school, when you're 14 and the seniors are there, and at our school at Wheeler, we had in the area, there was a number 3 team in the nation at that time, when everything was kind of like, I know U.S. soccer is everywhere now with MLS Next Pro and ECNL, but when everything was kind of under one kind of table, you kind of had the best talent kind of filtered up this system, right? And I remember, like, when I was a freshman, there was the number 3 team in the country had their best talent spread out throughout our throughout Cobb County. So, you're playing against guys. I remember there's a guy, Devin Prescott. He was so fast, so skillful. And, I remember he just blew by me and I was like, whoa, like you're meeting players that you would never get a chance to train with in club soccer or play against in matches. So that was an incredible experience and actually made you grow up much faster because you would get embarrassed or you didn't want to get embarrassed or, sorry, excuse me, or, just the speed of play, the physicality. So as a 14-year-old, you're playing against 18-year-olds. You got to, there's also a different way they speak to you. They're a little bit more aggressive. They have expectations of you. So you grow up really fast, right? And I always felt that for U.S. soccer, when I remember I was talking about culture and all those different things, I actually think one of the biggest travesties is that we haven't figured out a way to incorporate high school soccer into the development pathway for players. And this is why I say it's not because it's like, high schools. It's like, I'm thinking in my head, they mostly have the facilities, right? They have the facilities access for free, right? So you're not dealing with the field space thing. They also can get training. You can train more. They have the weight room. They have actually all the facilities that you need to run a proper program, which all the club soccer that you all paid into was, hey, here's a field and then meet at this other field for a game. And also another factor was, you played high school games, you would get anywhere from 500 to 2,000 people that weren't just your parents. That's your friends who were like, hey, we got the Derby. You got to beat Walton. You got to beat Pope. You got to beat Lassiter. Those are the teams in our area. And that kind of gave a little rivalry, a little sense, a little pride. And it was more important, where, I get it. If you're a kid that's been playing in front of your parents from age 6 on the way to 16, 17, okay, by the time you played Bethesda or Arlington or whoever for the 20,000th time, it's hard to kind of get that same kind of energy and feeling. So I always felt that helped me because, when you go to college, it's the same jump, right? You're 18, you're playing against a 22, 23-year-old. So it's that 4-year jump where I'm physically and mentally maybe not as developed as this guy, and I got to compete for a spot against him. So I think we miss a lot in not valuing our system and what we have. And if there was a way we could figure it out, I don't think it will, but if there was a way to figure it out, it would actually help out a lot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I talked to a guy named Andres Rodriguez. He probably didn't know Andres, but he played. He beat our team in the state final, and he was a wonderful player. And they had to beg him to go play because he's a top player, but he just didn't want to. He just didn't want to play high school like most top players. And he said it was the best soccer experience of his life. And I was talking to Bo Amato, who you may know, coach in the area. Yeah. He's a part owner of Villarreal, where Chandler plays. And he coaches a high school team. And, I'm like, well, instead of coaching a high school team where you don't make any money, it's like $3,000 or $4,000 for your time. He has to pay a coach $15,000 or whatever they pay at Villarreal. I'm like, why don't you just take on another team there? And he says, you can't replace high school soccer in terms of there's people in the stands. You gotta announce where the games mean everything. He says, a club, I love the technical part of it, but there's no one there. And so there's something about it that he loves. So
yeah, you're right. And it kind of prepares you for like people in the stand, prepares you if you're going to play pro or college, people are in the stands and they have a vested interest in how you do beyond being related to you. Right. There's that element of, like I said, it's great that your parents are there, but wouldn't it be great if your friends are like, hey, we're coming to this game, man, we got to win. There's something on the line. So that's something we don't tap into with U.S. soccer. They've kept it separate. They've tried to be European instead of, and that's like, you asked me what I learned. I was like, well, what is your culture? Right. Dig into your culture and just make that better. Get the coaching education done, make it a valuable part of the system. Use the resources that you would get free through high school. You get what I mean? For the development of the kids, because you're not going to get that free through club, right? How many clubs are struggling, as we know, back in our day, we're struggling for facilities in the winter or early spring or whatever. Yeah, it's hard, even if you're a big club, it's hard to get those facilities. So, just imagine you have the high school that you have a whole support system. I just think it makes more sense.
Yeah, well, that's a great point about just go ahead and we can be ourselves and still excel. So how did you end up at George Mason?
Yeah, so through club soccer actually. So my coach was Dutch, Alex Bama, and he in our youth system, he said, "Look, we don't go do all these tournaments. He's like, when you're about 16 to 18, we'll start doing showcases and in places where you can be scouted." So when I was about 16, 17, we started to go on these tournaments. So back in the day, there was one called Tampa Bay Sun Bowl. That was very big. There was also Castle, which is very big. So I'm naming tournaments that may or may not be around anymore.
I think Castle
But they
still
were,
is. Castle still
your
is.
capital is okay. These were the tournaments you got kind of scouted on the East Coast. So I think they saw me at Castle. And then they sent the brochure, the packet to me. And so I remember getting the packet, and I remember I was like, whoa, because you get some stuff, I would see some D3 stuff, and that was fine. But then when you got the D1 from George Mason, there's a big packet with all the information, brand new booklet, that kind of gets you already, right? And then they say, hey, we like what we see. We're going to come out and see you in Tampa. I think they came and saw him in Tampa, so they wanted a final look, but we're going to San Diego for another showcase. So if we did tournaments, it was showcase where college coaches were going to be there. And so they couldn't make it to San Diego, but they were kind of friends with another college and say, hey, can you check this guy out? We're looking at him. Tell us what you think. So they liked me, and then they brought me in for a visit. And I liked it. It was totally different being up in the Northeast than Georgia. And I was like, okay, I'm hooked, and let's go on this adventure. And that's how I ended up there.
Oh, and who was your coach, and what did you learn from him?
My club coach?
No, the coach at George Mason.
George Mason. So yeah, my coach was Fran O'Leary. Fran O'Leary. It was a different style of soccer. It wasn't my favorite. I'll be honest with that. But at the same time, I will say defensively, what we learned on being disciplined and closing down as a group and being mentally switched on, I think I definitely learned a lot from that. He recruited a lot. I will say this. He recruited great. We had guys from everywhere around the world, from Ireland, England, Scotland, Gambia, Trinidad and Tobago, you name it. We had every type of culture in there, and plus with the American players from around the country. So we actually had a very skillful team, players that helped push my level. There's some things football wise I definitely would have done different now, but from that moment of being in that environment, I do think it did help me as a player.
Okay. So what are some of your highlights of your George Mason career?
Ooh, let's see. The biggest highlight was probably I scored a 35-yarder against Townsend. That was my senior year. It was crazy. If I was looking at it, if I was coaching it, I would be like, wait, you had space to dribble. What were you doing? But it was instinct. I think the ball came out. We were on a counterattack. Got to my teammate Tiba. Rest in peace, Tiba. Unfortunately, he passed 2 years ago. But Tiba played a pass to me, and it bounced once, and we were 35 yards out. There was one defender in between us, and I just saw it went boom, hit it upper 90. So that was a highlight. Oh, and then. Well, that was the best goal I scored, but the highlight was probably my sophomore year where I earned all CAA tournament team. So that was, that was a great experience for me. I really played lights out. I really grew as a player my sophomore year a lot of adversity, and it helped me grow.
Okay, so college soccer now, about 5 or 6 years ago, if we talk about that, you weren't big into college soccer at the time. And I talked to Ben Olsen the other day, and college soccer is an interesting place now because some of the American players are bypassing it, and there's a whole lot of things going on with college soccer. The pandemic has created a logjam also. So even if you're not a pro prospect, but a good player, you may have a hard time finding the right team. What are your thoughts about college soccer for high level players at this point?
Yeah, I think it's it matters where you want to go as a player, right? I think if you're focused to say I want to be professional, I don't think it's the best path, mostly because of the schedule, right? The scheduling is just horrible. In 4 years, I played a year and 4 months of competitive soccer, right? Because spring season is, it's 5, 6 games, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same intensity, it's not the same level. Um, and everyone's focused on going to spring break, so it's not even, it's not the same focus as the season is in the fall. So if you look at that over a 4-year period, you're playing a year and 4 months of actual competitive football. I would say that's not enough if you want to be, and I think there's levels. Say, hey, I want to be a top level pro. Then you're trying to jump into this 1%, and you have to do more to get in that top 1%, right? But if you're like, look, I want a good experience. I want to be at a college. I want to be an important player. Maybe you make it into the draft because that's a good way to make it into the draft. Then I think it definitely does serve a purpose. I assume your top 30 programs in the country will give you very good competitive preparation, and they're also, I mean, as you know, like you're saying, the logjam, most of the scholarships are going to foreigners anyway. So it's going to the kid from Bayern Munich who didn't sign a contract, or Arsenal, or whoever that decides, hey, let me take a crack at the States for a little bit. So if you're able to make it into the squad and play, it's good, because one thing, it's a negative in terms of it's taking opportunity away, but it's a positive, and that's what happened to me, is that I was one of the few Americans on the field that actually played in my college team. Like, everybody else is foreign, so I had to, I had to adapt to that. And they were all, when they would come over, the foreign guys, even when they're your age, they came over a little bit more mature. They, because of how their lifestyle is, they maybe are working already, maybe lived on their own already. You never know. I mean, I had teammates with all different walks of life, so that also helps you as well. So I can see it being. I can see, if you want to be a good level player and you're at a good program, and if there's good coaching, I can see it helping you. But if you wanted to go to the next level, then the scheduling is a problem. Definitely a problem.
Do you still believe, as you did 5 or 6 years ago, that it's important for young players to get to Europe on trial? If you're a really good player, can you get the experience in America that you need, or is it important for you to get to Europe at some point?
I think it's very important that they get experiences as soon as possible. It doesn't mean that they need to move, but as soon as possible, because I think that the main thing that the main issue I see with Americans making it is actually not on the field, it's off the field. It's our lives are very comfortable in the States, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually running a residency program here in Holland right now. So we have some players we got 2 houses here in the north of Holland. We're about a little bit less than an hour away from Amsterdam. And, there's certain things I even try to teach them. I say, look, you have to learn how to be independent. You have to learn how to handle things on your own. You have to, you have to figure out things, how things operate, right? Because over here, your contemporaries, same age as you, they're doing this already, right? So I'll take case in point. Like I live in a safe village, but like my son is 7 years old. I just tell him, go take your bike, go to the Keph court, stay there and go play, and then come back when you're ready. Right? Probably wouldn't do that in the States, but I'm doing it now. So he knows, okay, he's got to cross the street by himself. He has to check. He has to do this. Oh, don't forget your ball. Don't forget your bike. Don't forget these things. So it's, that's a little thing, but, it grows, right? It grows into more responsibility. So I think those are things that, if you ask me, it's like learning how to being comfortable, being uncomfortable is the biggest thing. So you come over here, you're not going to have all the choices of food that you used to love, that you love, or stores don't stay open as late. But one thing they have better than I did when I came over here to Europe is, what we're doing right now, being able to talk to a screen and talk to people and share your experiences and, be able to have relationships via social media. That was something that was a little bit more hard. Even around 2006 when I went, it was, kind of had webcam. You had the AIM instant messenger. Those are two. I mean, it helped, but it still is not the same as what they have today, where they can be, they can be anywhere and be in contact with their parent and face to face 24/7 pretty much.
It's funny because I talked to Marcus Ginyard, who played for UNC basketball, and
Oh,
he had a pro career over in Germany and other places. And he said the biggest transition was going over there, getting a bank account, learn how to live by yourself. There's a lot that he had to do in his first year. It was more than being a young professional in America. He had all the stuff he had to think about being in Europe. So I
yeah.
guess but soccer itself, just the technical, the tactical, that's not, you can get all that in America now. That's going to Europe is not necessary. It's just the living in Europe and existing in Europe.
I mean, let me frame it this way. The biggest thing is off the field, but when you're on the field, how fast can you adjust as well? Right? How can you adjust to the speed of play? I mean, yes, of course, academies and the level has improved in America. That's no doubt. You see the players that are being signed, you see the opportunities that are happening. But the biggest thing I'm looking at is like, you know, when you get here and actually being successful and staying for the long term, you know, not many players still have done that yet, right? You know, I think Pulisic, I think McKinney, I think Adams. You know, these are players that were developed in America that have come to Europe and established themselves, right? But there's not many. I mean, I think Brendan Aronson is starting to get to that as well. But you know, one of the points that I try to make to people, I said, look, all right, let's kind of take this. Let's kind of look at this, like Brendan Aronson and also Tyler Adams. You know, Tyler Adams goes from Red Bull to Red Bull, right? So he goes kind of in-house, right? Yeah. A little bit. I mean, of course he has to work hard. He has to prove his worth, but it's a little bit more in-house. It isn't like he left New York Red Bulls and went to Borussia Dortmund, right? It's you know what I mean? He kind of went in-house. So it's a little bit more protection, you know. Has to work hard, has an American coach. Had an American coach in Jesse Marsch that came through. Obviously, he proved himself with Nagelsmann as well. And then even Aronson leaving and going to Salzburg, you know, there was a little bit, you know, there was he goes in the Red Bull family, even though he came from Philly Union. There's a little bit more of a support system. They understand and they like the American player. Some clubs have that, right? Even Dortmund has that. They like and support the American player. A lot of other clubs aren't like that. You know, you come as dog eat dog, you know, maybe you don't have the support or the belief, and you need that. So the biggest thing is for players to understand the fight they have to go through, because like I said, what happens on the field will bleed off the field, and off the field can affect on the field. So just like you were saying with Marcus Ginyard, right? You were saying that, you know, how to live on your own. Do they have the language issue? Do you have a close friend? All these things are going to affect how you come into work every day. So I'm really looking forward to see the American trained player, how they adapt to really being over here and making a career. I think the talent is definitely there, right? So the talent is there. And sometimes, many times with the European clubs, they're very stubborn, right? And I try to tell them too. I say, look, you're bringing an American player, and yeah, he might be a little bit behind your players, but he's starting at, you know, at zero. You give him 6 weeks, you give him 3 months, he may catch up to your players and surpass them. You just have to give him the time, you know? So that's also another conversation, because I think European clubs sometimes don't value us highly enough, and some do. And then some, you know, it's almost on a case by case basis. But what is good is that 3 American trained players, and if you want to add Aronson as well into it, you know, 4 American trained players played at Champions League level consistently this year: Brendan Aronson, McKinney, Pulisic, and Tyler Adams, right? Mm-hmm. So they came through the American system. They've come over here and they've established themselves, and hopefully they can keep going. And hopefully that the next generation understands that too. It's not, the door's been open for you, but that doesn't mean that you can walk through it. You know, that you can actually walk through it and hold a place in the house, right? Mm-hmm. That just means the door's open. You walk through. Now can you keep your room, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's going to be the next step.
Mm-hmm. So, in what country, and this answer probably changed since you went to Europe yourself, which countries are more conducive to the American player? I mean, offhand, I would think England would be nice, because the style of play is most like the American. There's no language barrier. I would think when I was in the Dutch seemed a little bit hostile to American players. That was my impression, but maybe not. But you know, I don't know. When you look around Europe, which countries offer the best opportunities for American players?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could also come down to your culture too. But even being American, your culture. I mean, I think obviously Germany has been the hotbed, right? Which is had the most, and the most players have had the most success there. So Germany would be probably stop number one. England, the level's really high, especially because they changed the rules with Brexit. Now they can sign Brazilian youth internationals. They can sign Colombian youth internationals. They can sign, so now that competition has kind of gone up. So it's a place that I think you need to make sure you're really established before you go, because now you're playing at the top level probably in Europe, right? So I would say Germany. I think Holland opened its doors. I mean, since the past 5 years I've been here, they signed like 4 players. So they signed Alex Mendez to Ajax. They signed 2 players. They signed Richie Ledesma to PSV, and then also there was another player. He was a left back, Chris Gloucester. He signed to PSV, and then I think there was another one.
Well, there's an Ajax player that's at Barcelona, but I don't really think he's an American. He's American only by I guess his father was a GI or something like that.
Yeah, Sergio Dest. So I mean, but there's some that they signed from America. So because to get a contract here as a non-EU player, they got to pay you plus $250,000 US dollars or euros from 18 to 21. So they invested the money, thinking that these guys can do something. So excuse me, sorry. So I'm really of the mindset that Holland's invested some money. I mean, it's been no one has hit big yet, but it's good that you see that they're at least interested in the market. But yeah, I would say Germany would be number one. But listen, the biggest thing now is that most of the investment coming in is American money buying up these clubs. So you're going to see a lot more. I mean, if you look at the club in Venice, they signed like 2 or 3 Americans. You look at all these other clubs, these groups being made, buying clubs. A lot of the American market is going to start being used, right? So I think the next 10 years are very, very, very interesting, because everyone is trying to crack that nut of the American market and finding that next great American talent.
Well, and do you think you're looking for a specific type of player when they come to America, or just like any good players of all different shapes and sizes?
I mean, most of the scouts tell me that, look, they like the Americans' attitude to training, mental. So they expect that we work hard, that we're mentally strong, physically and athletic. Those are things that are characteristics of our culture that they want to see come out when they see us, right? And then if you have something special, maybe it's your vision, maybe it's your dribbling, your passing. And if you can show that you can hang at that level and then bring that extra attitude of American, diehard spirit, you know what I mean? If you could bring that, then that I think brings you, can definitely have clubs really, really take to you. You know what I mean? I mean, I think if you look at Tyler Adams, I think if you look at Weston McKennie, I think they bring some of those aspects, right? You can see that they're leaders, they work hard, they're very mentally strong and focused, and they've been able to establish themselves at 2 clubs that have now been playing. I mean, Juventus is obviously a European powerhouse, and Leipzig is starting to turn into one of the stronger clubs in Germany and all of Europe, and they've both been able to kind of stamp their presence in the midfield. So that's big, and I think if they didn't have those qualities, I think it would be harder. You know what I mean? So it's good that they have that, but I think we also have different types of players, right? I think we have the flair number 10. I think we have the tricky winger. I think we have, I think center backs, and, we have to see if we have but I think we have every type of player. It just now matters. The thing I just try to say is that if they have the same kind of player, or if you're only a little bit better than what they have, then they're like, so you have to be, your level has to be much higher. And if it's much higher, then I think they'll look at you different. So that's the thing I try to tell the American guys that come over. I was like, if you're a decent midfielder, well, they have a lot of decent midfielders. What makes you stand out?
Yeah. Before we get to your own journey and how you got to Europe and whether you consider the MLS, why don't you tell us a little bit, because you referred to it, about SMI and how you give kids opportunities in Europe?
Yeah, definitely. So back in the day, we used to call it SMI, Soccer Market International, and we changed it recently to put everything under JOGA, right? Which is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's good. It's good you brought it up. So essentially what we were doing, our mindset with the beginning of SMI, which we call Soccer Market International, was to say, okay, we had the club here, JOGA, and then we had an opportunity where we say, okay, we're gonna expose players, not just from JOGA, but players throughout the wider market to the European market, right? So that's whether it be Holland, Portugal, Denmark, all these different places. So we set out to start sending players on trials, getting their video seen, talking to scouts, going to showcases. And what that led to is that, from 2016 to 2021, I mean, we got about, I want to say 7 or 8 players signed. So a girl signed at Carlin Baldwin signed at Sporting Lisbon, or Sporting Club Portugal, as they call it, Sporting CP. We had another player signed in Hungary for Honved Budapest, which was the champions of Hungary back in 2018 or 19. We got him signed there. We had a Dutch player that we got signed to Oriental, 3rd division. In Portugal, who was doing showcases. We had a number of players signed in Denmark, moved from an academy. So, we had players kind of going out and we were doing a lot of showcases, helping get trials and just really opening the doors. So that's, and I guess it kind of follows a little bit of my journey on why I went to Europe. So we wanted to kind of create a similar type of pathway, if we could, create a network for these players.
And so, that's great. So why don't you go ahead and tell us, did you consider the MLS? Was it, because it was probably 5 or 6 years old, or did you always want to try your luck over in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, so when I met my Dutch coach at 16, he told us about Europe, and he's like, we're gonna go to Holland. Like, we don't go to these all these tournaments, but we're gonna bring you overseas. I was like, okay, you got me hooked. So when I went to Holland, it was, it just blew my mind. You get there, the locker rooms, the setup, there's scouts at your games, there's agents. It just opens you up to a totally new world that none of us had a clue. I mean, we were training back in the day, club soccer, 2 practices a week and a game on the weekend. So that was my generation, right? So much different, but no, I think. Yeah, that's what really got me. And then, when I got up to DC, DC is one of the areas, the DC or Northern Virginia, Maryland area is one of the most connected, if not the most connected, in my opinion, in soccer in all of US, right? Because I just felt the opportunities to meet people, like, a couple of times Bruce Arena would come to our college games because one of my teammates was like really good friends with his son, and then also I think Kenny Arena would come around at some time. I remember seeing those guys. Like, so there was a lot of soccer power brokers and different people around, overseas people around. So I always felt like, okay, it's interesting that you got more of the sense of what MLS was around that area, right? Because, especially Atlanta United was not around when I lived in that area, so you had no semblance of it. So for me, MLS and seeing that is kind of like, it was more of a foreign thing than actually what Europe was, because I was going to Europe pretty much every year. Even in college, I went after my freshman year, I went again on a showcase. So, and then finally at 22. So, but, when I did my 4 years of college, and then that same coach, Alex Palma, he became a general manager of Comber Leeuwarden, which is 2nd Division pro club. And, a year prior, one of my teammates named Kendi Tresic, I played club ball a little bit with him. He was a year older. I played club ball a little bit with him. He went to Penn State, played at Penn State. And then during, I think his junior, senior year, he left Penn State and he came over to Holland to come train and play for a year or whatever. And I saw he was earning trials, scoring goals. I was looking at the newspaper clips because, back in the day, that's what you read online, the newspaper clips. We didn't have these full articles yet, right? But that inspired me. So I remember it's 2005. I'm looking at him like, okay, let me call Alex. I'm like, Alex, hey, I saw what Kenji's doing over there. Could I get it? Is it possible I can head over there, for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. He's like, yeah, sure. He's like, look, we'll help find your host family, save up $1,000. You get with a host family, live over there, and, see what happens. So that was, when my senior year ended at George Mason, I decided, I packed up my bags, and in August 2006, I was like, let's get the flight, let's head out there, And so that was the beginning of the story. And it was a whirlwind. It was a whirlwind, like, for me. So yeah.
So what is it like to try to chase these top division teams in a small, a great soccer country, but a small country like Holland. And how did you do? Did you ever get to the top division?
No, so I did. So pretty much they wanted to sign. So I actually first trained with the youth team because I wasn't there for a trial initially. I was there. My coach was taking over the club at that time, becoming the general manager. So the club that he was going to send me to, I was going to go play with an amateur club first. The club he was going to send me to wasn't starting preseason for another like 2-3 weeks. So he said, look, we're going to put you with the U17s. I'm 22 at that moment. I'm like, cool. This is cool. We're trained by the stadium, all this stuff. I went to training camp with them about an hour away. And that was a great experience, staying in dorms and cooking and all that stuff with the boys. And I did so well, with the guys. And I think I also just really, I didn't act like a jerk. Like I was like, oh, I'm 22. These guys are 17. I kind of just went with the flow and enjoyed the experience that I earned a trial. So I remember I was at the game on Friday night after my 2 weeks with the youth team. And after the game, my coach says, hey, you're going to have a trial with the first team on Monday. We're looking for this type of forward. You seem like you got some of the qualities. We want to check you out. So I was like, you go from, okay, I want to be going to amateur club to now I'm going to trial with the first team. And really being honest, I didn't prepare for that. If you get what I mean, like that whole summer, I wasn't like prepared on like how you're going to be a pro, how you going to be organized and all that stuff. So it was like a real whirlwind. And so I had my trial. And after that, I think I ended up doing pretty well. And I remember Alex came to me and he said, look, he's Dutch. So he told me everything I did wrong first. He's like, but in a nonchalant way, he's like, yeah, but we're going to see if we can sign you and you can maybe play Friday night. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? So that was a whirlwind for me, being there the first like 2-3 weeks and just seeing what European football was about, and they tried to get me in, but like I would cost 250,000 euros. I was too expensive and didn't have a U passport, so close, but still it just opened my eyes to what it was. And that's actually what gave me the motivation to start JOGA, being honest, because I was so close and I didn't even know, you know what I mean? I didn't know. Like, my mom was a single mom, didn't know about soccer. Nobody in my family plays soccer. There's no, people always ask me, are you from Africa? Are you from Caribbean? And I was like, listen, I'm from one of them, but I don't know where, you know what I mean? There was no family lineage that led me to soccer. It just really somehow caught on. And then I went as far as the game could take me.
Well, and then is that when you ended up at FYPC, Fairfax Police, and started coaching? Is that your next move?
Yeah. So when I finished in Holland after about 6-7 months, I came back and I started training and I ended up at FYPC. Then in 2008, I think for like a 2-3 month period, I tried to go back and play again when I was about 23, 24. But that didn't work out. Then I finally set myself into coaching. And then, I was doing FYC, but then also I got to give a shout out to Golden Boot and Tamir Linhart.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you had Tamir on yet.
But I will. Yeah.
He's definitely a double legend. You got to get him on. Yeah. But Tamir, I remember I'd worked with Tamir for years. And I asked Tamir, I said, look, I really want to try to get a group of dedicated younger players in that I want to work with. And I was like, I do a lot of your U5 to U8 programs. Can I kind of recruit and scout? And Tamir, God bless him, because he didn't have to do this, right? Because, essentially I used his business to start a business, right? And so he said, fine, I'd always, help bring people to his business. But him really opening the door for me, huge, because he could have been like, no, these are my clients. you can't do anything with him. But he was totally fine with me kind of picking out these special, well, I wouldn't say they're special kids, but I would see like 5 and 6 year olds and just be like, okay, hey, I'm starting this group JOGA. We're going to play soccer probably every day. Do you guys want to come and do it? Da, da, da. And then, oh man, you're bringing nostalgia on me, man. But, so like when they were 5 or 6, I remember I got a group of like 10, 12 kids, and we just started showing up on the street courts and playing every day. So I would train them technically for about 15, 30 minutes. Then we would play, 2v2, 3v3s, and had the boom box out, the music. And that's how JOGA started, really, because I've been in Holland. I mean, I was a street player too. So like I said, high school, not even in high school, but like in Georgia, like we can only train twice and then you have a game. So the other days I was just playing on the street, playing with the ball by myself, play pickup games as much as we could. So I was already kind of in that mold. And then when I went to Holland, I'm seeing all the street stuff. I'm like, oh, this is it. And I'm like asking, what's the difference? What's the difference? They're like, yeah, the street. And I was like, oh, my players got to be ballers, So I started street soccer. So we're doing, 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. And people are like, what? People thought that was insane. But I was like, we're having fun. You know what I mean? At the same time, I hope people understood that. And we kind of really developed like a family core from that idea. And then that's what led into the academy, So like when I met you all in the academy, we kind of kept that same kind of vibe where, we'd be training, but then we have street soccer. And then obviously we started adding the games and tournaments, but then also Europe trips. So it was kind of I guess I tried to build the soccer experience that I never had, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. So where was your soccer mind at then? Because that was before Pep Guardiola came to prominence. And I know he had a huge influence on you. By the time my son was playing on a team for you, like 2014 or 15, you were definitely a tiki-taka, a little ball type of coach. Where was your mind when you first started coaching? Because Pep wasn't prominent. I guess he was just becoming winning titles with Barcelona about that time.
Yeah. So, I mean, he won what? He won 2009 to 2012 with Barcelona.
Yeah.
Anyway, but even before Pep, because I grew up, because my Dutch coach was the first one to teach us how to think. From 16 years old, I actually noticed that I started to pick up and look at the sessions and be like, oh, this is how you do it. So by the time my senior year of high school, we had a coach, like our head coach left my senior year because he had a family issue, right? So our assistant coach that came on, he would help do stuff, but I pretty much was a coach my senior year. Like I was running the sessions. I'm like, look, we got to do this in the sessions. So everything that he was doing, I was doing in sessions. So we're doing 2-touch possession, build from one end to the other, so we're like operating, trying to operate more like a European club, I guess, and how I wanted us to train. So I already started picking up that coaching kind of thing about myself when I was like 17, 18, right? So, and so Holland was already possession-based style. This is what I tell a lot of people is that Barcelona is great, but they kind of they commercialized and they marketed what was already being taught in Holland and Ajax and those places before, right?
So Cruyff brought it to Spain, right?
Yeah, he brought it to Spain, and then Ajax, I think, really missed a number back in those years. Barcelona took the incredible academy class with the incredible talents of Messi, Xavi, and Iniesta, and then the teaching, and then they expanded it, right? Then they started offering everyone to come and learn and everything. So, even when you guys were with me, we would talk about, yes, I would talk about Barcelona, but I never even brought you guys there. Right. Like it wasn't like a thing like we got to go to Spain. Cause I'm like, well, this similar or the same principles you learn in Holland. You know what I mean? About the positional play, about 4-3-3, about the triangles, that stuff was already ingrained in me when I was 16 years old.
But Holland, one of the reasons why we went to Holland, because it's a very livable place for kids. As you said, your 7-year-old can go down the street and play ball. Like Holland is so easy for Americans. So if you're having a residential camp, even if it's not about soccer, and Holland's a great soccer country, it still makes sense. What do you think about the clubs? And we'll get to the DAs later, but just the clubs in America. What do you think about the travel club system, and how does it compare to the club system in Holland? Like, for example, I remember when we were in Den Helder, far north of Holland, There were two
Yep.
clubs in Den Helder. I remember we trained at both of them. And,
Yep.
how do kids decide which club to go at? And what's the difference between the club system in America and the club system in Holland?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I guess both try to recruit you, which is good, right? They try to recruit your talents. I would say the club system in America is based on really based on quantity. So it's like how many numbers can we get? Because you really are running a business, right? You have to run the business from the standpoint of, we got to pay for these fields, we got to pay for the coaches, we have to pay for the directors, we have to pay for this whole conglomerate business around it, right? Where, and obviously the parents are the investors in this business. And, because everybody kind of falls in line, that's what everyone kind of does. Where here, it's more like we're building new turf fields in our place, but it's like the city's doing it, like the community, like it's coming out of the budget, for so everything is very, very connected. So it's like membership club. So my kid pays 80 euros a year to be a part of his membership of the club.
That's
We have
it?
access to, yeah, that's it. 80 euros plus, whatever uniform we need to buy. That's it. He's young age, but by the time he's older, it'll probably be like 200, 250. That's it for the whole year. So it's really a club. You get what I mean? It's like a membership club, so people are paying into it, and it's not really based upon. And coaches here complain on that because you can't really make a living coaching in Holland at amateur level. It's very difficult, like pretty much impossible. You have to have another job. So when you tell them that in America you can make 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, $100,000, they're like, what? They can't believe it. But unfortunately in the States is that here in Europe, at least the investment flow, the idea is that, you start your amateur club and then you get scouted. And then as you get scouted, you work your way up and and then you become an investment for the club, right? So now your training's free, everything. So we just don't have that system in the States. It's like, and parents, we don't know any better, right? Or now I'm a parent, but most parents don't know any better. It's like, okay, this is system, is what you have to do if you want good training, if you want to be around the good players. So I guess we're going to have to pay. When really you don't really need to do all of that so young, in my opinion. I understand by the time you're like 13, 14, you probably have to be in those kind of systems to get some exposure. But before then, save your money. If your kid plays every day, you do futsal. If he plays every day, you do futsal, you have soccer culture. Maybe he goes to a trainer or two. That's about all you need. You know what I mean? In the beginning. But, all this money spent on everything in the lead up, right? So that's a big difference, and also you got to think about it. A lot of the money in the U.S. goes out of the system, right? It goes into coaches' pockets. It goes into the directors' pockets. It goes into the tournament directors, the deposit. It's not like these tournaments are creating. I mean, I'm pretty sure, you go to a tournament, the club, they raise some money for scholarships and stuff just to pay themselves again, by the way. But it's not going in to say we're investing in this kid because we feel we have the next Christian Pulisic. You get what I mean? And that's what's happening over here. It's like, look, the investment's going in because we're going to find the next one. If we sell him, he's going to be able to pay for the academy for the next 5, 6, 10 years. So we don't have that connected system. So we have so much money flowing in, but not really flowing back through the system. So that's why you get this huge disconnect. And one of the saddest things, I remember I was talking to a coach, it was a foreign brother, and he said, Keph, he's like, I love what you guys do with JOGA. This was before I left in 2017, 18. Actually, I was there in 2018 as well, right? I was there. We did the academy again. But he said, I love what you guys are doing. I love what you guys are teaching. I love that you're doing all that. He's like, but in the end, the parents, no one else cares about it. They only care about winning, my man. He's like, I found out a while ago that that's all they care about. He's like, I don't care. I'm just here to make my money. And when he told me that kind of hit me. It was sad that he would say that because he, just someone who loved football. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're talking about, by the way.
Yeah. Like I know he loves football, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, how could you? You know, it wasn't even trying to blame him or anything. It was just more along the lines of
It is
I
what it
get
is.
what it is, what it is, you know. And so that's one of the reasons I had to kind of go. I think for my sanity, because I was like, that's not enough. You know, because I'm really passionate about the game. I really want, I want players to know that we care for them and we want to see them, go to their highest level. That's always been our mindset. So, just seeing that and the work that you have to, the work that you put in the States is sometimes not seen. It's not that everyone needs a pat you on the back. It's not that. It's more along the lines of uh, development is a long-term journey, and people want microwaved, everything microwaved. I'm like, no, this is a long journey. It's going to be a build-up for you to make it to where you're trying to go. So unfortunately, the youth soccer world in the States, that doesn't, and also here you got parents here because, look, Ajax has already scouted my son, right? And his team, right? So we had a U8 game. His team does well. They're in the divisions and all that stuff. So his team does well. They compete with teams from Amsterdam. And so Ajax scout came out to us and I was like, oh, that's cool, whatever. But I wouldn't even jump into that because you see a lot of parents here, they're like, what's Ajax? What's is PSV? Oh, everyone's jumping to all this stuff so soon. And I'm like, wait, you got a long time before you got to get up there. You know what I mean? And you got to make sure they enjoy it before you put them in that environment. So that can also sometimes be a little bit much because everybody just wants to be there now. And I'm like, look, let's just take our time. Does he want to do it? And trust me, you probably know me. I want my son to be a professional soccer player. I'm stating this here. I want my son to be a pro. I would love it. But at the same time, does he want that lifestyle? What time you got to eat? What time you got to sleep? It's very disciplined. It's just you have to be very motivated, and more than motivated, you have to be very disciplined to do this type of life at a certain level.
Yeah. So quickly about Den Helder though. Those two clubs there, the city built those fields for those clubs in Den Helder.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the city, and then they have something here where you can build a club where, like, let's say the club itself comes up with a third of the money. Then there's a bank loan that you can get from the bank, and then the other third comes from the city. So that's how a lot of these are built.
That's crazy.
Right.
That's cool.
So if you think about it, that's still a huge investment.
It's a huge investment. Yeah. So, okay. So you're a good Dutch. You want your kid to be a good player. So when Chandler was 7, 8 years old, I said, I want my son to be a good soccer player. I think it'll help his confidence. So I took him to Golden Boot and met Samir. That's where we met Derek and Aaron Hurd. No. Andrew and Aaron Hurd. And we met Elias, and we met Aryan, all former JOGA players. And so we invested in him, paid all this money for travel programs, trips to Europe, all those things. In Holland, do the parents make the same kind of investments on their kids that the American parents make?
No. They pay for the club team, and that's about it. One thing that has been showing up though is the training academies. So people are now paying to the training academies, but they don't pay nearly as much.
Like Ricardo, our friend
Ricardo. But yeah, there's a lot more now. They're offering their services, and it's definitely here. That business model is definitely here where parents are paying. And what they say is because it's due to the lack of street soccer, because the kids don't play as much anymore. Right? Because back in the day, the street took care of your skill. You would play every day, every night, and now it's it's a little bit different. So, yeah.
So Chandler, and two of those tours that we took, we had the best time, just this immersion in soccer culture. Akmar is just one of the most amazing towns in the world. People should go there. But I remember when we go to games, we go to we play various club games that you would set up, and there'll always be scouts at the game. And at first I'm like, oh, these guys are scouting Americans. But then I realized they're scouting the Dutch players. And I guess, they see a player they like. I met the coach. He's a big name, Junker. I met him, and he was just looking at players in the club. And I guess they would take a player. And then I met a parent one day, and he said, yeah, my son's playing, and we live up there by Den Helder. And Ajax comes every day. They take them on a bus or whatever, and they pick them up and they take them to Amsterdam, or not every day, but often. And so I was so impressed by how organized the scouting networks were and how they funnel the good players to the bigger clubs. Is that
Yep.
still the case?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. I mean, Ajax itself, I think, has 80 regional scouts within North Holland. So we're in their area, the North Holland area. And now AZ is doing a lot of scouting because they're considered one of the better academies as well. So you see it, people are watching. That was one of the things I try to tell the players on the residential, that are doing our residential program, their age like 15 to 19. I said, guys, there are agents and people here everywhere. It's just you have to show something. You know what I mean? Like, if you're good enough, somebody's going to be like, okay, who are you? What can we do? I mean, it's just such a more open system than I think what you get stateside, right? Stateside is like, oh, well, we know this guy is the best player. And then if you're trying to get people through, it's a little bit this kind of like, almost like, oh, who suggested you type of thing. That's not so much. I mean, yes, you have that, but it's not so much here, right? If somebody sees talent and then people start talking, there's so many networks to kind of go through. You know, there are people who know if I really wanted to be aggressive and meet Minariola, I could. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I know people that know him. Right. But I'm not like going out here like, oh, I need to know Minnow. I need to know this guy. I need to know this guy. But if you want to meet people that are connected in the game, it's pretty, I won't say easy is too hard of a word, too easy of a word, but I would say it's very doable. There's way more access.
And even without the scouting, though, let's say you're at a club, because they have a relegation promotion system. If you're at a club, any club can play its way to a higher division based on the talent that you can show in games. So you can play your way to an upper division as well. So does promotion and relegation have a role in helping the Dutch identify talent?
Yes, it's huge because it gives you a purpose and ambition, right? Because, you don't want to get relegated if you're in the league. And if someone's higher than you, you're always looking to say, okay, how can I mean, this is natural human, tendency. Okay, this person's faster than me. How can I be faster? This club is better than me. How can we get better? Right. And if everyone is kind of on that mindset, it just helps lift the level. So, okay, you're scouting. Okay, we got to scout. We got to get some of our scouting budget. So when they go to their sponsors and say, hey, we need an extra, $2K for this scout, they're saying, hey, we need an extra $2,500K for this scout because it leads to this and leads to this. So that's why you get the building, right? So they have a foundation and they build on top of it. What we have is you got our base floor foundation, which is our players and our system. And then it's not going to, the money is not getting here. It's getting dispersed outwards. So the players and the coaches at that foundation just incrementally a little bit get better because, like I told people, I was like, Christian Pulisic opened the door. When he went for 65 million, that started a market. They're like, there's 65 million out there. You know what I mean? People are like, there's 65 million out there. That's what happened. So now agents and other people are like, because other people were first movers, right? I think we were one of those people too. Like, hey, you gotta look at the U.S. market. You gotta look at the U.S. market. And most of the clubs are like, yeah, we got enough here. We don't need to pay attention to you guys. But when he went for 65 million and other players, McKinney went for 25, then he's like, okay, there's millions, there's value there, right? So let's start paying attention to it. So what really pushed the level was actually Europe actually pushed the level in the States. You get what I mean? Because MLS wasn't selling. But then when they saw that guys were not signing contracts with them and going straight to Europe, Europe is what has the global market is what's increased the level of the current MLS player. The investment back in the club, how they operate, right, has moved up because there's a global market now coming in and creating value for them that they weren't creating themselves. That's really what happened.
And so the more we open our markets with promotion, relegation, whatever, the more talent we're going to create.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way, right? There were 10 bids for LAFC, right? North of $400 million, right? Mm-hmm. So out of the 10, they chose one. That means what? Let me do my math right. $3.6 billion got wiped off our investment. You're saying that that investment doesn't matter. Think about that. You wiped 3.6 off because we picked the bid for LA and you guys get LA. Does that make sense?
And you give them no incentive to stay in the MLS because they automatically stay in the MLS no matter how bad they do. Is that correct?
No matter how bad they do, they stay in. And you see that. I mean, I saw something with the TV rights. I mean, I think the NWSL had higher ratings than them, and then you see that they're not. Their games, the TV deals are not getting the TV deals that they need. Well, you're not generating interest because you're trying to control the whole system instead of liberate the system, meaning, give everyone access, and then that's going to create the value, the marketing, the support. That's going to make, you, Julian, not just being an Ajax fan, but, JOGA could have built a pro club and now you're a JOGA fan. So now you're writing the blogs about us and you're interviewing the players. So now you're creating the value and market around our players, which leads, how it is. How do they create the college stuff? College, the reason why college sports are so successful, they don't have promotion relegation so much, is just they just gave access to so many people that it created this huge market, which created this whole business around that, right? Mm-hmm. They're stunting our growth so much just for the control of their system. And then people aren't still paying attention to it because guess what? We have the internet. You could be watching Champions League right now. You could be doing, they're up against the wall and they're killing their own local market. So even local players, they're killing your own market there because people won't get that much interest about you until you go overseas. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of, like I was saying, there's a lot of money being lost on the market. There's a lot of it's not being put in player investment. I mean, also, like I told you, all the foreign investment is mostly being led by U.S. conglomerate groups. Mm-hmm. Most of them, Pacific Media Group. There's a couple of them, but they've bought up like 2 or 3 clubs, or 3 or 4 clubs. So that means that money is not being spent in America. They rather buy a 3rd or 2nd division club in Italy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that stuff. Well, I'm not sure if you've been around to see all this, but what is your opinion? Does the DA, now the newest flavor is MLS Next, does that help matters? I mean, we talked about we compared the travel club structure with America with the club structure in Holland. What are DA's MLS Next? Does it help matters at all, or you think it's still the same old thing? And money going in and not really going down to the players and the parents.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much the same, except MLS now gets to consolidate the whole market, right? Most of it, now they can look at everyone because, now if you think about it, they made MLS Next Pro, which is considered pro league. So that means they can sign you to that. And then they got the MLS team. So essentially now, because they can sell assets to the global market, or now they're in the business of doing that, they're trying to get control over all the assets, right? So they get you into that. And that's one thing I try to tell parents. I was like, remember, even with MLS, they close your market because they just don't let you freely move within their own system, right? You could have never played for MLS club, and DC United could be like, well, no, you can't go to San Jose. What do you mean you can't go to San Jose? I never played for your club. Well, your rights are with us. Your MLS rights are with us. So if you think about it, it still stunts the growth of everything because there's too many gatekeeping things that are an issue. Yeah. So the main thing I think really is, yeah, I mean, I think will there be some changes? I assume so, but it's, I mean, I think I think there'll obviously be some improvements. I know they're doing their showcases. They're bringing more European scouts and agencies are coming out there, so that makes it bigger too. But I don't know. I mean, will it shift the needle huge? I don't think so. I do think there will always be there'll be like a little incremental improvements, right? But until you get like that real compete, because now people still compete on, well, I'm in MLS Next and you're not. No, like no, you can see how good we are and what we're teaching compared to what you're doing, right? That's what people should be rating it on. But as you know, when why we stopped JOGA even back in 2016 or 17, whenever we stopped it, the JOGA 30, we saw the DA come in, and I said, well, people are just going to go to DA. I was like, and we're a small group. I was like, you just need one domino to fall, and then next thing you know, you're scrambling to keep the group together, right? So the way I look at it is that, these leagues things and, it's still about controlling access, and too much control on the access means you lower the quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, two more questions, Coach, and thanks so much for your time. This has been great. As your tactical strategies, how you see the game change at all in your 4 or 5 years. Now, you talked about on the outside how you changed as a professional, how you run the club, kind of your philosophies. What about the tactics themselves? Are you still more the Dutch tiki-taka combination, Barcelona, or have you changed it all?
Yeah, I think I don't want to use the word more direct, but we do try to play a little bit more forward.
That's a big change.
Yeah. It's more not just controlling the game as in the whole pitch, but more controlling the game in their half and wave after wave of attacks. I mean, I think you learn by watching and seeing and then exploring these different teams. So yeah, we try to, we still want to possess, we still want to dominate, but we've been focused a lot on 1v1 recently. I mean, ever since probably even back in 2015, 16, we were focused a lot on 1v1 because, now most teams go at you and they press with multiple numbers. So players have to be calm under pressure, make decisions. Can they find the opening? Can they break the pressure themselves with the ball? Can they find a pass to break the pressure? So I think in our philosophy and our style of play, we're a little bit more direct. Like I said, I love the old Arsenal style of play with the combination play and the freedom. But, obviously we want to be modern in terms of being able to how we press as a group, how we force the other team into mistakes higher up the field if possible. Those things are still there. And I don't think we say just keep it so much. I think we're thinking about how can we attack. If we can go in one pass, we'll go in it. You know what I mean? And we want to create pressure as high as we can up the field. But we still have elements of what we built back in the day with JOGA, if you get what I mean. Right. So I can definitely put some of those videos out, and you'll still see some of those elements. But we definitely attack quicker now.
Okay. Last question. And you discuss the challenges that U.S. soccer has. Will we get to world-class level in terms of national team? And if so, how long will it take?
Ooh, that's a good one and a big one. Will we get to world-class level? I don't think we'll get to world-class level anytime soon. Mm-hmm. I think we will have very good players. I think we will have more established players due to the global market. I don't know. I think to get to world-class level, we have to demand more what's going on the domestic side. That means more pressure for everyone involved: coaches, players, GMs, operations, academies, clubs, everything. That has to happen. Fans, supporters, there have to be a way bigger expectation on all levels, because, I always think about this, like with U.S. sports, let's say basketball, right, or football, that, say, oh, you're world-class in it, you're the best in it. But of course, we're also that's where most of our focus is compared to other countries, right? But at the same time, if you see okay, why does your LeBron make it to the levels that he did? Well, he had pressure, right? He had the pressure of, I got to make it out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's some kind of pressure that comes, that pushes you to a certain level to keep pushing and to elevate your level. And it doesn't mean you need to be just in a bad economic situation. I mean, in Germany, they have pressure. You know what I mean? And if you're playing for the German team, they probably don't have many stories of guys being totally poor, right? Tony Cruz is not totally poor, but he plays at the top level for the past 20 years. Well, how does he do that? Because, you know, you have the culture, you have the influence, you have the pressure, you have the access, and then that comes together to create Tony Cruz. I think we'll get better and better. I don't know yet if we'll get to world-class level yet. I think we'll be good in 2026. I think we'll cause problems because I just think first of all, the U.S., the way U.S. soccer is even built, we're a tournament culture anyway. You know, even the whole development thing is a tournament culture. Meaning, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. And if we get on one of those let's go moments, it doesn't matter how we're playing. If we get a couple chances, we score, and then we fight like dogs and stop you from scoring, and then we're in our own country and everyone's going crazy, we'll feed off of that. You know, so I don't think anybody wants to play us in the beginning or any game. I mean, not saying they're scared, but we're built for tournaments. Everything is, it's March Madness there right now, right? Or April Madness, whatever, or just finished, right?
Yeah.
Just finished. So the whole culture of our system is really built up on those moments like that. So the World Cup, yeah, we could cause some upsets and some problems. But being consistently world class, like I said, I see here my son's team, like they're not doing all the training stuff that we were doing back in the States. You know, how many hours, like, oh, we got to go run this train. They really just go outside a lot of the times where they have soccer at school or it's on TV or, it's a culture. So you kind of see how they build it, So, and then you see like, okay, if you play for that club, you see how the gradual buildup is. It's starting to get there. Like I said, I think the MLS franchises are starting to consolidate more the talent, build more. I'm just not sure if that's going to lead to world class. I think it will lead to being better. I'm not sure about the world class. World class to me is like the top 8 nations, like the nations that won World Cup. So you're talking about world class. You got Brazil, Argentina, Italy, probably England, Germany, Spain, France. Can we break into that group and people be like, look at these Americans?
Yeah.
I think we're at the 3rd tier. You get what I mean? Because the 2nd tier, you got your Belgiums, you got your Netherlands, you got your Portugals, you got your,
Nigeria.
Huh?
Nigeria.
Yeah, you got your Nigerias, you got your Ghana, then you got your, a couple of more Spanish country. You got, your Colombias and all those, you know what I mean, who aren't even going to make the tournament. Mm-hmm. So I think we're at like that 3rd tier. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're at that 3rd tier.
Yeah. Well, Coach, thanks again for your time. Also, I guess as my son's soccer career comes to an end, it's been great watching him develop. And you really made him, I really enjoy watching him play. And all the kids that you coach, they're different and people don't understand why they're different. And it's funny because sometimes coaches don't understand them. But you also taught the parents about soccer as well. And I watch soccer with a different eye than I would have if my son had never been involved with JOGA. So we really appreciated the experience that we had, not to mention the great trips we had. People that are listening, I would get in touch with you if they want to take some great trips to Europe, not just great time, but the kids really learn how to thrive on their own independently, and also play European kids that really want to kick their butts. They really like beating Americans when you're in Europe. So all that experience, I would encourage people that watch this to get in touch with you because it is a special program that you run.
No, thank you, Julian. No, thank you guys for being so involved in the program. Okay, thank you guys for the support. And yeah, man, I got to get over stateside to see all these boys because they're getting so big and they're grown men now. I can't even say boys anymore. They're grown men about to go start their lives in college. So I'm happy and I'm very proud that I've been a part of their soccer career in any way. Yeah, maybe Bassam and us, we can get something together. We can do one more tour. It'd be great. Hey, yeah, we'll get it together, man. 100%. Yeah. Okay. All right. Keph, thanks again for everything, Coach. Hey, thank you, Julian. Have a great night, man. All right, buddy. You too. All right. Thank you. All right.